right. Hello and welcome. I'm Theodor Dimache and I'm a technical director at Minded. We specialize in leveraging technology to transform businesses through data and product engineering, driving growth, and making an impact. Today, I'm excited to be in a conversation with George Holler, founder of Holler Law Firm. Welcome, George. To start off, maybe you can share a little about yourself and Holler Law Firm.
Sure. Thank you, Theo. I'm George Holler. I'm the founder and primary owner of Holler Law Firm, headquartered in Milford, Connecticut, in the United States. We handle real estate transactions in 13 states, primarily in what are referred to as attorney states. Those are states that legally require attorneys to be involved in real estate transactions. And I've been doing this for almost 30 years.
Wow, 30 years. That's a lot. I bet a lot has changed in 30 years.
Yes, it has.
I have a set of questions let's say, some curiosities that we want to cover in this interview, especially in today's fast evolving business landscape. What specific challenges is the real estate industry encountering, and how is Holler Law Firm navigating these?
I think that the concern that we have, and I'm sure our competitors are feeling as well, is how do I keep up? There's so much changing so quickly. Every time you turn around, there's a new ChatGPT version, or there's additional capability that 6 months ago no one thought could be done. And I think it's an ongoing struggle. It's like an arms race. Oh, the other guy got a bigger gun. I better get a bigger gun. If I don't have a bigger gun, I will be out of business in the next year. So I think the rate of change is what's causing people a lot of anxiety. And I think it's also a question of, okay, I know I have to keep up. The question is how, in what way?
Makes sense. And I'm looking at interacting with people from other industries. I can tell you it's not only in the real estate industry, it's all over the place. A lot of things are changing fast, and I agree with you there. How is AI shaping the real estate industry, particularly in terms of addressing the challenges that you mentioned earlier? Can you share some examples of how these AI-driven changes are manifesting within Holler Law Firm?
Sure. Yeah. So I'll speak kind of narrowly in my own segment of real estate. I know that the real estate industry is a broad question, but from our perspective, 5 years ago, companies were exploring AI and saying, okay, if we have a bunch of data, how can we read the data, understand the data, and action off the data? But the only people who could do that were huge companies, because you needed a huge amount of data, and they were the only ones that had it. In fact, there was an acquisition probably 5 years ago. It was a company called Doma that bought a kind of regional title company. And the reason I'm convinced that they bought the title company was for the data that the company had. Doma was founded by some data scientists out of the San Francisco area, and their goal was to essentially apply AI to real estate. And so what they needed to do was go out and buy data so that they could apply their models to large amount of data. And they were successful in doing that. But I think what's changing now is that you don't need that much data anymore. So AI has become much more accessible to much broader range of companies. And the days of thinking that, well, if I'm not huge, I can't compete, are over. I think if you're a small to mid-sized company now, you really have to be thinking about, how am I using what I have and getting value out of it, because other people are using what they have and getting value out of it. And again, it's a question of, how do I stay competitive? I think the biggest challenge or risk that we see is how much of the work that we do can be automated. I know there's a lot of information in the news about lawyers and their the hallucinations of ChatGPT, and they're filing briefs with cases that are completely made up. They sound great, they just don't exist. So that's a concern. But I think people are trying to say, if somebody gets it right and they're able to do the work for 20% less cost than it costs me, that's going to create a huge advantage. And I face stiff competition that I can't keep up with if I don't perfect the same type of or better technological application to do my workflows. That's a big issue.
For sure. Disruption within the industry is a big topic. And I also agree with what you said earlier. Data, from our perspective as well, is gold. It's really gold. Sure, large language models have made things a lot more accessible these days because they incorporate so much of the internet within them, but still specialized knowledge, like, your own domain knowledge that you have in your own systems, could prove to be very useful in fine-tuning existing large language models or specialized models.
Yeah, and we're seeing that as well. And I, not to jump ahead to anticipate the questions, but obviously the work that we've been doing with Minded is really at the cross section of that. It's like, okay, here's what exists in an LLM right now. It can do a lot, but how do we take the reasonable amount of data that we have at Holler Law Firm? It's not the type of data that, people like Doma paid for, but it's a good amount of data. How do we leverage that, eliminate hallucination, and really obtain work product that is high quality, that we know is consistently good enough to use, right? I mean, that's the big issue is I think you can get work product, but can you count on it enough to be able to say, hey, we can, in other words, if I'm going to have a person look at my AI return consistently, what's the point? I'm just spending money on the AI return. I could have just had the person do it, right? So there's that balance of finding the right mix of the AI is reliable enough that ideally it's better than having the person do it, and then having the person do the stuff that the person really needs to do, and allowing the AI, trusting that the AI can do the work that the AI is good at, and not be falling on your face like the lawyers who filed briefs with some, made up cases.
Yeah. Very good points. And yes, very nice teaser for the upcoming questions. True. What emerging trends or technologies do you see playing a pivotal role in the future real estate industry? And how is Holler Law preparing to adopt these changes?
So from our perspective, I think there's an intersection between LLM and robotic workers, right? So we've talked about this extensively.
We have,
It's okay. LLM is great at taking data, unstructured data, interpreting that data, and producing structured data. And then once you have structured data, you can take that, apply robotic workers to it, and accomplish tasks, right? Because one of the challenges that we face right now is we've got unstructured data. Human beings look at it, they interpret it, then somebody needs to low value work, which is to enter it into our database, for example, or run a series of actions off of it based on the decisions that structured data now implies, right? And so I think the intersection between those two technologies is, from my perspective, where the gold is in our particular part of the real estate business. And I can see this applying across other industries as well, right? I think it's a similar problem that so many people in professional services face. Unstructured, create it to structured. Once it's structured, what do you do with it, right? Yeah. And sometimes it's, in the end, that structured data still requires a human decision. But a lot of times that once the data has been structured appropriately, again, assuming you can eliminate hallucination and really have confidence in what you're producing, robotic workers really allow you to then execute on the next steps and really move your projects forward. So that's an exciting piece for us.
For sure, I agree with you. And we've talked a lot about robotic workers in our previous conversations. And I agree with what you just said about structured, unstructured. And I think that a lot of companies have a lot of data, vast amount of data, which they can't use because a lot of it is unstructured. A lot of it is not mined properly. They don't know how to extract value from it yet. So in the upcoming months or years, there will be a lot of effort into mining data from these data sources. So yes, having a robotic process automation which follows, let's say, the beaten path that a human has worked on for so much time, sure, tedious work, but still valuable work, which can be automated and made a lot more efficient through RPAs, for sure. There's an intersection between AI and RPA, for sure. Can you share some insights into the AI solutions that, what we teased about earlier, the ones that Holler Law Firm has implemented in collaboration with Minded?
Sure. Yeah. So we're really doing exactly what you and I just discussed, right? We're taking unstructured data in the form of title-related documents, right? These are documents, copies of deeds, copies of mortgages, tax records, lien records, etc. We're taking that, using OCR, applying LLM to that, and saying, all right, let's essentially create a structured report. We now know who owns the property, how many mortgages are on it, what's the amount of the mortgage, where would we find these documents in the public records, right? So this is all unstructured, literally PDF documents, copies that we've pulled, and we're teaching the LLM to put it into a structured format, right? On the opposite side, and we haven't gotten to putting them together yet, but on the opposite side, we're teaching robotic workers to take structured data and interact with various websites or within our own database to produce, templated documents, etc., to execute actions. So as those two pieces come together, as we perfect the structuring of data and we perfect what do you do with the structured data, I can see this, the vision that I have is that we'll get to a point where automation will do a large part of what currently is done by our production team. And then our production team can really focus on the areas where people add value, right? Which is in customer support and answering questions and exception management and that kind of thing. And
exactly.
Get away from the kind of tedium of just literally staring at a screen, typing something in, trying to make a decision, all the stuff that is being done by people now, but really is not incredibly fulfilling work and probably not being done as effectively as could be done by automations.
For sure. It's not about replacing people. It's about helping people do more with their time and actually bring more value than just focusing on this tedious work. From your experience, what are the key elements that constitute a successful and productive technology partnership?
Well, I think obviously critical is capacity, knowledge, right? I mean, you can't work with a technology partner that doesn't know what they're doing, that doesn't understand the technology. And I think just as equally important is the ability to collaborate, right? Because I think what's happening in AI right now is that the technology is new, relatively new, right? And so you've got this mismatch between the technology people and the business people, right? So the business unit has this vague sense of what can be done. The technology people have a great sense of what can be done, but don't know what needs to be done. And so collaboration is really the critical piece to execute and get any value there, right? You need to be able to, the business people need to be able to explain the business needs effectively to the technological people. And then the folks on the technology side need to be able to say, okay, I understand the business need. Here's what solution could be applicable here. And then we try it out, right? And we're willing to kind of go back and forth and say, that worked, but no. Or a lot of times what we found is we'll come to you guys with a business need and say, this is what we want to do. And you guys turn around and you produce something and it does exactly what we need. And then we realize like, wait, now that we see what can be done, what we asked for was, why did we even waste their time with that, right? It's all of a sudden, it's almost like that unknown where because you don't really understand what the technology can do, you limit the business use case to what you think it could possibly do. And then all of a sudden you see what it can do and you're like, oh my God, we can do, 7 things that are way more valuable and way more important than the use case that we presented initially. So that collaboration, I think that partnership, and it's like a played out word. We're vendors, we're not vendors, we're partners. Like everybody says that. But in this particular case, I think if that's not what's happening, you're going to miss the opportunities here. If you just end up with a partner who can do it, and we've had this has been a debate. I think it's been going on for a long time, right? We had a chief technology officer at our company a couple of years ago, and I was talking to Tom at the time and saying, look, a lot of the work that we were doing, we could outsource to various partners. And his reaction was, yes, we could, but understand what you're going to get from most of those partners is exactly what you asked for. And that's it. That's it. Yeah. They will code what you ask them to code. It'll make no sense for the business. It'll achieve nothing for the business, but it will be what you asked for.
Yeah.
And I think that is has been a very common model. I think that's what led a lot of companies decided they were going to go for the cheapest technology provider because it's easy. That's, let me save my cost. But the value creation there is just not the same as when you have a partner that can dig in, understand the business need, and come back and say, are you sure that's what you want? Because we can build that, but are you sure?
Yeah.
And to me, that's what makes a good partnership. And then I think on the flip side, from the customer perspective, if the customer isn't willing to give the feedback and invest in the process, I think it doesn't matter how good the technology partner is, because they're sitting there saying, well, we built exactly what they want, but we're not being told, does it work? Does it achieve what they try to achieve? Or I think the other issue is, I think a lot of times people can't articulate what exactly they want to achieve, right?
Yeah.
So in other words, they look at a business process and they say, I want to produce X. Okay, well, what are you going to do with X?
Yeah.
What is the point of that, right? And so you say, I'm going to produce it, but what are you going to do with it next? Because sometimes, as we've discovered, I'm asking you to produce X, but really what I want is Y. Yeah. And I just think that I need X along the way. So I think that both sides of a good partnership need to be iterating back and forth of this is what we can do and this is what we need, and this is what we can do and this is what we need. And in the end, you come up with a product that is really, really effective. It works well, it's stable, and it's producing the actual desirable result for the business.
Very, very good points. And I agree. I fully agree with you. There needs to be an engagement from both sides in order for any partnership like this to work, both from technology partner, both from the business. A lot of times, if people are not engaged, they're not in there 100%, they don't explain what they need, or the technology provider doesn't listen or doesn't ask the right questions, it will happen as you described it. You'll get exactly what you asked for, and it might not be what you need. So I fully echo what you just said, and this is one of the reasons that I value our partnership so far, is that we managed to do this collaborative work, and you came to our side trying to understand what technology can bring you. We went as close as possible to your side, trying to ask the right questions and trying to understand what you do and also what you really need.
Yeah. No, that goes an incredibly long way, because like I said, I think that's a common challenge in technological services is just, the difference between an in-house staff and an outsourced staff, or maybe part of the business model. People are trying to, if you have a customer that is always all about cost and, it's got to be the lowest cost thing, well, okay, you be really, really clear about what you're purchasing, and we'll be really clear about how many hours. But in the end, especially with what's going on right now, where there's such rapid change, I think the difference now between 5 years ago is that people had a pretty clear sense of what technology is going to do, right? Mm-hmm. And so, okay, we're going to get our supply chain more efficient, or we're going to get our billing system in better order. We're going to automate some tasks. It was relatively clear. It was almost like you had a ball and you were going to squeeze a little bit more juice out of it, or a lemon, squeeze a little more juice out of it. And so from that standpoint, it makes sense to be really cost conscious, because how much juice is going to come out versus how much effort am I going to put in? So the relationship between a company and its technology provider made sense to be focused around that. I think the difference now is that it's so unclear what the impacts of AI are going to be in business, that if you don't dig in and partner up really closely, you're not going to be the company that captures the right solution. You're going to have a great AI product or solution, but everybody else is going to be like, why are you doing that? You miss the value creation out of this thing. You're busy having your AI do something, or your new technology doing something that is just not nearly the value add that our use is doing, right? And I think that's where the partnership is critical, because we don't know exactly how this thing is going to play out and what the impact is going to be. I think that's the difference right now.
For sure. This is a team effort. It needs to be a team effort for this to work. Yeah. Thank you, George.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And thank you. Those were all my questions. Thank you for taking time to have this discussion with us. I think your insights were very valuable. It was eye-opening to hear about the role of AI in real estate, and how Holler Law Firms is trying to be there, pioneering efforts in this area, and as we look towards 2024 and beyond, we're excited to continue this journey together alongside you. And thank you once again, George, for joining us. And anything else to add before we wrap up?
No, thank you for inviting me. It was a joy to spend some time. It's something I'm passionate about, and obviously we've worked a bunch together on it already. So I'm looking forward to continuing to advance the ball in this area. And I hope to be a leader and not somebody that becomes a dinosaur. I do not want to own a blockbuster video franchise. They were great, but nobody's using them anymore, right? And that's where we're at. This is an inflection point, so it's an exciting time.
All right. Thank you very much, George.
Thank you.